Basketball, soccer, and Atari. Atari was a video game system. Then there was one more, which Chariots of Fire was a very popular movie. So they were all going like this. No, 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 no. You've given us nachas. You've given us joy. You've been such a pleasure. You're our Benji boy. That was mortifying. Anyway, I thought that for this event I should say something sort of important, a la Jack, the 10 mistakes I made in my life. I couldn't limit it to 10. So what I thought I'd do instead of that is actually go through my entire history. Like, I'm not kidding. Like from the time I'm born until now. So stop me if it gets too long. Really, because I can also cut stuff. Like I could cut my grandparents out, different things. Now I have a weird thing in my head that I remember things based on food. Anyone else have that? Like food spark, I remember every meal I ever had. And if I can only get rid of all that information, I could put in so much useful information instead. But I can't.
Was it zucchini fries?
It might have. That I don't remember actually. I was too nervous. But anyway, so I divide my life based on foods. So excuse me for that. So the first part of my life I call the Charleston Chew years. Anyone ever have a Charleston Chew? It was not kosher. You should not have had that. I just caught you. I'm being very serious now. Is there a Farber here? Not yet. Okay. Because I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey, at a time when there were still non-Jews in Teaneck, New Jersey, other than the cops and the robbers, I guess, which are the non-Jews now, but not all the robbers. And I basically had a non-Jewish babysitter, and she would constantly give us Charleston Chews. That's what I remember. And my parents, what I want to go is I want to go through each stage of my life and tell you who was important to me really in those stages. So that was, of course, my parents. My parents are the best parents in the world. I'm talking to the camera now. Anyone else think their parents are the best in the world? You're wrong. My parents are the best parents in the world. I'm sure yours are too. And my parents, they love me to death. Everything for them is for the children. And we can literally do no wrong. Like, I wanted to test that at some point, like go on a crazy shooting spree or something. And I'm sure my mother's reaction would be like, oh baby, did you hurt your finger on the trigger? Or like, I don't know, something like that. And you can't say anything bad about my parents. Like, sometimes I'll say, oh, my mother's being so annoying. And Farrell will say, yeah. I'm like, Farrell, what are you, nuts? Like,
it's on film.
You can't say that.
Keep it down.
Anyway, that lasted for 5 years, and then my family moved to Israel. We made Aliyah. I don't know if all of you know that. It didn't work out. We only lasted 3 years in Israel. I call those the shish kebab years, because the first night in Israel we had shish kebab. A taxi driver took us to this place from the Merkaz Bikta. I'm sure he had some deal where he took every Newell led to the shish kebab place. And my name during those years was actually Moshe HaChazak, which you may wonder why Moshe HaChazak, right? Well, the name that I'm called up to the Torah is actually Moshe. And HaChazak, I was like a really pathetic Oleh Chadash. I didn't speak at all to anybody. And then one day, I just lost it. There was a bully, his name was Itamar, and I clocked him. Like literally, in the sandpit. And from then on, they called me Moshe HaChazak. And in fact, I met a guy 2 years ago in Jerusalem. I said my last name, he's like, Moshe HaChazak. I was like, yeah, that guy really had it coming. I am Moshe HaChazak. And it was like, really nice. The people obviously most important to me then were my brothers. My brothers are my best friends, Josh, Donnie, and David. I look up to them, and we have an unbelievable relationship. Some of you know some of them or all of them. But that was an amazing time for me, and that's what really brought me back to Israel, was living here for a little while. The next thing, maybe I'll skip my grandparents. I was going to call that fish cakes and fried salami. I'll just give you the 2-second version. My grandmother made 1 million fish cakes before we come down to Florida, and we weren't allowed to say that we don't like them. And we go there for the whole summer. We had no money for camp apparently, or it was used on other things. And I lost like 30 pounds every summer. And I only weighed like 60, which was dangerous. And my grandfather was interesting. Some of you know, there's Naomi, also grandchild of my grandparents Hain. My grandfather was from the Deep South, from deep in Virginia, maybe not the Deep South. All his friends were in the KKK, if you can believe it. No joke, every single one of them at one point. It was the 1920s, that's what you did. Like, what are you going to do? There's no TV. And he actually saved Martin Luther King's life once. Avi doesn't believe it, but he claims he did. The story would be so much better if Martin Luther King hadn't been assassinated later. But anyway, so that's that stage, because I spent a lot of time with him when I got back. The next stage I call fish sticks and sandy pizza. That's going to take us all the way through high school. So you don't have to worry, we're moving now. Sandy pizza, that's from Frisch. We had very sandy pizza. I like that stuff on the bottom. Anyway, I went to Yavna Academy, and I was suddenly the dib. Like, literally. I was the Israeli. I had a terrible accent. Everyone treated me badly in the beginning. First day of school, I went into the girls' room instead of the boys' room, which is like social suicide in 3rd grade. It was interesting, but it was suicide. I had to go to the resource room. I don't know if you know what that would be. That's not where the brightest kids are. I didn't know how to play football. Everything was, difficult, but then my friends were really wonderful to me. And then in 8th grade, I met Nomi Metzger. Actually, I met her before, but I loved her forever. You all know Nomi Metzger, the coolest girl in North Jersey? Maybe not. Anyway, it was an amazing experience because one day in computer class, she said, hey, and she had written Ben 1,000 times on her screen, which was some lingo for the fact, hey Josh, that she liked me. And then she was my first girlfriend, that's a long story, but I couldn't speak to her, I couldn't get any words out. I was so enamored. So I'd have to write lists of what I would talk to her about on the phone. And I remember the list. One of them was, isn't Leslie a loser? Because I knew she didn't like Leslie. Which is terrible. If you know Leslie, I'm sorry, you know Leslie. She is not a loser at all. She's actually really nice. I just had to do that because I didn't know what to talk about. Then I went on to high school. Something crazy happened. I got incredibly good looking. I was like an Adonis. And all the girls liked me suddenly. It was really interesting. Problem was, I was really scared of the girls. I was in the bathroom a lot. I didn't know what to do. There was one girl who would literally pinch my butt for 3 years every time I walked by. Dina, that was inappropriate. It wasn't you, actually. Not for 3 years, no. It was I sat on the bench a lot in basketball, as many of you can imagine who played with me. And my biggest influence then were, of course, my friends, many of whom I still have from camp and from school. Some of you are here. Stand up if you're a school friend or a camp friend. No one stood up. You're so not proud of it. Okay. And amazing teachers. There's nothing can replace an amazing teacher. My best teacher was Mrs. Cherkoff. Don't say it J-E. It's C-H-E-R-T-K-O-F-F. Okay. Then we have what I call the lean schnitzel years. That's 2 years in yeshiva and YU, which I did in 2 years. I didn't learn anything and I wasn't influenced by anybody. Next. Okay. There was one funny story, I'll tell you. In yeshiva, we never got seconds. Never. Never. There was a man named Shabu who held tight to the thing. One time he said, Yesh od. And everybody ran. And one person, Jeffrey Beer, anyone know who this guy is? He got lifted up on top of everyone else and slammed through a plate glass window. And he had a schnitzel injury, the only recorded schnitzel injury in history. I haven't spoken to that guy in like 30 years. 20 years. All right, next we move on to the sesame chicken period. That's when I met Farah. Farah told you about our first date already, which is great. Farah did not come from a long line of like Michelin chefs. All the food is good, but for like 5 years she made this sesame chicken every week, till I said something, and I should not have said that. We lived in a dump, as Farah said. Good. It was good for like the first 3 years. We lived in a dump, like Farah said. There was, like she said, the fridge was in the living room because when the real estate agent showed Farah the place, she didn't have the fridge there. So when we came in, right after we were married, we're all in the high of getting married, and there's a big fridge in the living room. We're like, why isn't that in the kitchen? Like, oh, there's no room in the kitchen. Okay. Smart real estate agent, right? We had mice. We had one time... It could be, yeah. No, we had tons of mice. They were going through the whole life cycle in our apartment. One time I went to sleep and I stepped on a sock, but it wasn't a sock. And then I woke up and it was a mouse. It had just died there. I'm sorry. I'm just giving you the full details. But we were happy. I think like the room is probably equally divided on, why Farah stays with me. Some people think it's an adventure. Other people think, she should have left me long ago. I must be like a great lover or something. There's probably a little truth to both. But in all seriousness, you are the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I love you. By far the best thing. Except my mom. The next stage I call Schnitzel Part 2. And that's where we get to our kids. We moved to Israel, back to Israel in 2000. And one funny story, we had a mitapelet named Malka, an old Iraqi woman. Yerushalmi, you know, and we couldn't get Yitzi to eat anything. He came at 6 months. And she was like feeding him tons of schnitzel. And I said, like, how do you do it? How do you get him to eat all this? She goes, I take the schnitzel schmutz with a spoon and I give it to him and he loves it. And I eat the schnitzel. And I was like, do you also like blow cigarette smoke in his face? And the truth is she did. We saw her doing that too. So that was a big welcome to Israel. We've evolved now. We have a lot of schnitzel tiras that the kids like. And I want to let you guys know you are amazing, amazing kids. I want you to stand up and everyone's going to clap for Yitzi and Shaya. I don't know, I think they're great, and I'm sure you do too. They are wonderful children, and we're incredibly, incredibly proud of you guys. Okay, now we're getting really to the end. I call this the hummus soup with tomatoes period. That's like now. I had that last night, literally. I went out with Ziv and the Kupietskis. Are the Kupietskis here? Yeah, so I'm getting old and I can't remember all my meals anymore. So this is just literally the last meal. And it represents all the meals that we've had together as friends because it's been amazing knowing all of you, you being in our community, even those that you that left that we've stayed in touch with. And it's created really for us sort of a second family, which I think is so important when you move to Israel because you're sort of lacking your real family. And for that, we really can't thank you enough. So that's the stage we're in now. And I just want to take a minute now to talk about Kfar Tikva, which is the charity that we're honoring tonight. Because we are friends, and why not do something good together? So what is Kfar Tikva? Kfar Tikva is a kibbutz-type community.